Wicked problems and wise interventions. The research reviewed in this chapter has illustrated the challenges of finding effective ways to reduce the pervasiveness of aggression in many domains of life. Some firmly entrenched beliefs about effective control mechanisms, such as the deterrent function of punishment or the positive effects of a cathartic release of aggressive feelings, need to be revised on the basis of this research. New courses of action have been developed that address aggressive behavior at the societal, interpersonal, and individual levels, but these are still awaiting more extensive evaluations. In the words of Kasdan, 2011, aggression and violence can be seen as wicked problems that are characterized by a number of problematic features listed in Table 12.5. Taken together, these features illustrate why it is so difficult to find successful ways of reducing aggression. They also point to a tension between seeking broad solutions that pertain to many forms of aggression and specialized responses that are geared towards more narrowly defined forms of aggression. Specialization runs the risk of producing fragmented lines of research that fail to acknowledge the common roots and consequences of different forms of aggression, whereas broader approaches may lose sight of the unique causes and outcomes of particular forms of aggression. Therefore, general strategies for intervention need to be combined with domain-specific approaches for preventing particular forms of aggression. Table 12.5 Characteristics of aggression and violence as wicked problems. Multiple stakeholders have divergent views about what the problem really is. Aggression and violence do not result from any single cause, but from a set of interrelated causes that influence each other. Aggression and violence are not isolated problems, but embedded in other critical social issues. There is no single solution that will eliminate the problem. Action needs to be taken on the basis of insufficient evidence, and the problem is not likely to ever be completely resolved. Moreover, a closer bond needs to be forged between basic research directed at identifying causes of aggression and violence and applied research seeking to reduce aggressive behavior as a major social problem. Such a bond could provide a basis for strategies that Walton and Wilson, 2018, call psychologically wise interventions. The starting point for wise interventions is the proposition that social experiences, as well as perceptions of the self, are open to interpretation, and that these interpretations hold a key to understanding affect, thinking, and behavior. The hostile attribution bias, discussed in chapters 3 and 4, is a good example supporting this proposition because it refers to a particular style of interpreting ambiguous social behavior as motivated hostile intentions. Therefore, interventions that help people to change their interpretations of specific experiences or views of themselves so as to alter their construction of meaning may bring about changes in their behavior that lead to more adaptive interpretations and increase their psychological well-being. The idea that wise interventions promote such a cycle of person-situation interactions, as described by Walton and Wilson, 2018, is illustrated in Figure 12.5. Interventions are designed to promote the alteration of meanings placed in the middle box of the table to create a change in behavior that may lead to more adaptive behavior, an improvement of situation conditions, and a more positive style of thinking. The constructs in Figure 12.5 can be easily referred to the domain of aggression. In fact, they can be accommodated in the General Aggression Model, GAM, presented in Chapter 2. Like in the GAM, person variables, negative behavior, and negative situations or social contexts shape individuals' cognitions that guide their behavior, and interventions that inspire a change in these cognitions and behaviors may lead to more positive outcomes. Applying this proposition to altering negative perceptions of outgroups, research has shown that an intervention promoting the general belief that groups may change led Israeli Jews and Palestinians to hold less negative evaluations of the respective outgroup and show a greater willingness to make concessions for the sake of peace. Halperin et al. 2011. In a later study, the effect of this type of intervention was shown to last over a 6-month period of intense conflict between the two groups. These examples show the potential of using established knowledge about basic principles of cognition and behavior change to develop strategies that can be applied to the reduction of intergroup conflict. Figure 12.5, Mechanisms of Change Induced by Wise Interventions. This is a flowchart. Initial self-defeating cycle is between negative situations which lead to negative meanings, beliefs, interpretations, identities, etc. that undermine outcomes, which lead to maladaptive behaviors, which lead to negative situations, and on. And the initial self-defeating cycle can lead to altered meanings, change in the situation that inspires new meanings, and/or change in the lens through which people make sense of themselves or situations, which leads to altered behavior, which leads to the self-enhancing cycle, improvement in situations, which leads to more positive meanings, beliefs, interpretations, identities, etc. that improve outcomes, which leads to more adaptive behaviors, which leads to more improvement in situations. Previous chapters have shown that the causes of aggression and violence lie at different levels, from the individual person to the interpersonal encounter of two or more individuals, and from the microsystem of social groups to the macro level of society. Accordingly, approaches designed to prevent and reduce aggressive behavior need to reflect this multi-level causality. First, it is critical to reduce the odds of aggression and violence universally, i.e. in societies as a whole, by promoting individual development and well-being, strengthening interpersonal skills for nonviolent conflict resolution, and creating a social consensus that aggression and violence are unacceptable. However, it is equally important to develop measures that are specifically directed at persons and situations with an increased risk for aggression and violence. Finally, measures are required targeting those individuals and groups that already have a history of aggression and violence and therefore have a special indication for interventions, not least to protect their victims from further experiences of aggression. Summary: compared with the wealth of research into the causes of and precipitating factors for aggressive behavior, evidence on how to prevent and reduce it is more limited. Measures designed to reduce the scale of aggression and violence may be classified into two groups: general strategies for preventing aggression in its variety of manifestations, and specific strategies custom-tailored to reduce particular forms of aggression. At the societal level, reducing the opportunity for crime, e.g. by restricting access to firearms and using capital punishment to deter violent offenders, were discussed as general measures. Evidence on the effects of capital punishment on homicide rates provides little support for the deterrence hypothesis. By contrast, measures limiting the availability and use of firearms have been shown to reduce the fatal effects of violent attacks. However, the evidence is mostly correlational and does not provide evidence of the causal effects of such measures. Approaches directed at changing the general propensity towards aggressive behavior in an individual can build on the principles of reinforcement and observational learning. Trying to reduce aggressive behavior through punishment is of limited value because it requires several preconditions that rarely co-occur in a given context. Instead, reinforcing positive social behavior and providing non-aggressive behavioral models are more promising avenues for prevention. These aspects are captured in parent management training, designed to teach parents constructive forms of discipline and conflict resolution. Contrary to popular wisdom, catharsis, i.e., acting out aggressive impulses in a symbolic or innocuous way, is largely counterproductive in reducing aggression. It generally leads to an increase rather than a decrease in aggressive responses. Instead, eliciting responses that are incompatible with angry arousal and aggressive cognitions, e.g. through pro-social behavior or using pleasant music to buffer stress and anger, is a way of reducing aggression by influencing affective and cognitive antecedents of aggressive behavior. Anger management and observational learning can also be used to modify aggressive behavior. Rather than suppressing aggression, they replace aggressive responses with more adequate ways of dealing with frustration and provocation. As an example of tailored interventions directed at specific forms of aggression, school-based programs have been developed for tackling gang violence. Their aim is to stop young people from joining violent gangs by promoting social skills that enable adolescents to resist peer pressure to join gangs and to find non-aggressive ways of dealing with interpersonal conflict. Strategies for the prevention of family violence are located at 3 levels. At the societal level, legal instruments can be used for protecting potential victims and for improving the detection of abuse. At the family level, interventions for improving communication skills among family members are promising measures for breaking up inadequate patterns of conflict resolution. Finally, at the individual level, programs directed at abusive partners with the aim of teaching them anger management skills and alternative strategies for resolving conflicts with children and partners were of limited success. In addition, preventive measures directed at the potential victims of domestic violence seek to empower them to successfully defend their physical, sexual, and emotional integrity. Strategies for preventing sexual assault at the societal level, such as improving the treatment of rape victims by the police and the medical system, and increasing reporting rates, are designed to create a social climate in which the seriousness of sexual assault is recognized and victims are treated with sympathy and respect. Individual-level measures are directed at changing men's rape-supportive attitudes and challenging misconceptions about the acceptability of sexual aggression. Risk reduction interventions that target women seek to raise their awareness about risky behaviors and situations and to promote effective rape-resistant strategies. Finally, strengthening bystanders' ability and willingness to intervene when they perceive someone else in danger of being sexually assaulted have yielded some promising results.